Hey everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's Bedford One Career Conversation. Today, let me introduce myself. I'm Pam Bailey, and I'm with the Bedford County Office of Economic Development. We are joined with Trish Sawyer. She's a career coach at Jefferson Forest High School. And today's guest is Joshua LaFrance. He is the Senior Manager of Systems Engineering at L3Harris, which is located many locations, but he's at specifically the office in Forest. So I'd like to turn it over to him at this time.
All right, thank you, Pam. So at first I want to say, how happy I am to have this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm always impressed with, our high school programs and the outreach that we have, to the businesses and the community, to develop the relationships and take these opportunities to speak with our upcoming students. So thank you very much for your attention today, and thank you for taking an interest in L3Harris. Thank you for taking an interest in me as well, and giving me an opportunity to speak to you on behalf of L3Harris and on behalf of myself, with regards to my personal career and education experience. But at the end of the day, the mission is fast forward. How can we do things faster? Whether it's our mission critical communications for public safety and priority communications that we have here in the greater Region 2000 area, all the way through communications with our space systems, our maritime systems, our soldiers out there in hostile environments and those types of things. How do we put ourselves in a position to do things faster? Faster data analytics, just all around faster communication. So one of the things I was going to share with you is, a little more in-depth detail with regards to L3Harris. So L3Harris is one of our top defense contractors for the United States. It's a global aerospace and defense technology innovator. And annually, our annual revenue is about $18 billion a year. We've got 48,000 employees across the globe. 20,000 of those are engineers and scientists. We've got customers all over the world, in over 100 countries. And we've got facilities with our employees, coming in, doing their daily work, doing their innovating, their process management, doing everything we can to move forward fast. And those facilities are about 350 plus locations, throughout the world. Our business is comprised of four major segments: aviation systems, integrated mission systems, communication systems, and space and airborne systems. So we've got a wide variety of technology and engineering space, that can appeal to just about anybody that has an interest in those major areas. So now what I'm going to do is, I'll go in and kind of give a little bit about, background about myself. As it was mentioned earlier, my last name is LaFrance. My first name is Joshua. I do go by Joshua. A lot of times people ask me, is it Josh or is it Joshua? It doesn't. I introduce myself as Joshua. I did grow up as Josh, and I respond to both, and more than happy to do so. I don't get disgruntled about, being called Josh or Joshua. So when I was a high school senior, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So much to the fact that I didn't go through and take the SAT exam. I didn't take a pre-SAT exams when I was a junior in high school either. I studied Latin for 3 years, thinking that, when I was done with my high school education, I was going to go into a medical field, to become a medical doctor. But really, by the time I got to my senior year in high school, I decided, what, I don't really know if that's what I want. And of course, a little bit of that had to do with some lack of guidance, right? I had to kind of find my own way. And I think, you know, there is some value in that. But ultimately, when I graduated from high school as a senior, I graduated with honors. I had taken AP courses. I had taken, you know, I had some dual enrollment courses, you know, and, you know, was probably considerably a prime candidate to move into college at some university. But that's not, I didn't pursue that because I didn't know what I wanted. And so when I got out of high school, 2 weeks later, I had moved down to Tampa, Florida, and decided, you know what, let me try doing a trade for a little while. So I went into HVAC. It's down there. It doesn't really include heating so much because it's hot enough. It was primarily air conditioning, and so I did that for a couple of years. This was, you know, to give a little bit about my age, this was right around the time that September 11th happened. And I distinctly remember I was actually in an attic of an apartment building installing ductwork, and I climbed out of the attic, and one of my coworkers says, "Hey, did you hear about what happened?" And naturally, my answer was no, because I was in the attic. But upon learning about this, I was just totally surprised. It's like, how in the world does, you know, these types of things happen? And unfortunately, you know, that type of incident, you know, hit our economy in a way that, you know, a lot of people would not have planned for, and especially the business owner that I worked for. And so it resulted in some cutbacks, and I you know, I sold my place that I had bought, and I packed all my things, and I came back home to Lynchburg, where my parents were, and stayed with them for a little while. So I'd gone around and did some odds and end jobs, you know, and I'd gotten to a point, by the time I was about 20 through 24 years old, I was working for a local car stereo shop, installing stereo systems and alarm systems and video systems, those types of things into the cars. And one day my high school wrestling coach came into the shop. His name was Jason Clark. I think he's still in the school system somewhere. And he asked me, he says, of course I always called him coach, but he asked me, he says, you know, are you happy with where you're at? Is this where you know, saw yourself when you were in high school? And then, you know, of course, at 24, you know, 6 years removed from high school, and I told him, I said, no, you know, I think I probably would have been doing something different, you know, not necessarily that it would be better, but, you know, I think, you know, in hindsight, you know, I really probably would have seen myself doing something different with my life. And he says, well, you know, there's this local business and called Maycom, and they have a program. It's called a technician trainee program, where they bring you in, you know, and they put you through an associate's degree program at the community college, and you go through rotations, 6-month rotations through various departments, learning, you know, what it is that they do in this business. You know, they give you some part-time benefits, you know, you get paid, and they pay 100% for your tuition. I'm like, wow, you know, this sounds like my ticket to a different path in life. And so I pursued it, and I pursued it pretty heavily. But of course, you know, I didn't know how to write a resume, so I had to learn how to write a resume. And I didn't know how to interview for that type of interview. I wore a 3-piece suit for the first time ever in my life, aside from the tuxedo I wore at prom in high school. And so I went after it. And out of about 20 plus candidates, I was one of 7 selected for this program. So it was, you know, I was fortunate. You know, I was given an opportunity, you know, and it was kind of unplanned, not knowing that it was going to come my way, not knowing how much of a chance I really stood to take on this opportunity. But I went after it, and I decided that, I was going to give it everything that I had. And I was, like I mentioned earlier, I was successful in high school. And so I knew that the education part of it, I could probably apply myself and do pretty well. Well, I did exactly that. It was supposed to be a 30-month long program, from start to finish with the associate's degree. I didn't have any college credits prior to that, other than, some of the dual enrollment stuff that I did in high school. And the AP stuff it applied in some places, but not everywhere where I thought it would. And so I applied myself. There were some semesters that I took 9 courses in a single semester to earn, I think it was 21 or 24 credits. Just really went at it hard. And I finished that 30-month long program in 18 months. Which was, pretty fantastic in my mind. Hindsight, I probably would have slowed down because I didn't get quite as many departmental rotations, throughout the business. But nonetheless, I did it. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA. Was awarded for academic excellence, and it was quite an achievement. Doing that, sort of turning, quote unquote, turning things around, from, the previous 6 years, or, by this time it was 7.5 years of, my post high school career. And so, I didn't stop there. Once that spring semester, leading up to the graduation from the associate's degree program, I applied and was accepted into an engineering program at the Rochester Institute of Technology. And it was intended to be a 4-year program with some of the college credits that I had, was able to transfer. And then a few months later, I started my full-time career. I was repairing radios. By this time, the business had changed names. We were either acquired or by another business, and so things were changing. Not only in my professional career, but also my educational career, and so I took on that full-time job repairing radios, and did that through the duration of me obtaining my engineering degree. And once I finished with my engineering degree, I asked my boss. I said, "Hey, this is coming to an end here with my engineering education. What do you see me doing differently from what I'm doing today?" And he immediately left. He talked to me. He says, I expect you to grow in your career. And he immediately left. And it was either that afternoon or the next morning, somebody came up to me and says, "Hey, I hear you're graduating with an engineering degree. Would you be interested in coming to work for me as an engineer?" And I said, "Absolutely. Let's make it happen. It's part of the decision making, the plan, if you will, that I kind of envisioned for myself, when I started with the engineering program." And so I did. So I moved over to an engineering position, and I was probably about, and of course by this time I was married, and my wife and I we had a baby, and I was probably about 3 months away from graduating with that engineering degree. And my wife says, after this we're done. I don't want to do any more schooling. It's because she was there with me we were dating while I was going through the associate's degree program. And I said, "Okay, that's fine." So I moved into the engineering position. It was with our system staging group, and probably about 6 months in, my boss pulls me into the office, and we had sort of a one-on-one career path development growth discussion. And he says, "I really want to challenge you to go back to school and earn a master's degree." And I said, oh man, this is, my wife, blah, blah, blah. I had some excuses, but, they're tangible excuses, but, they're at the end of the day, it's kind of where do you put your, where do you, how bad do you want your career development and your personal growth, right? So I go home with my, tail between my legs and my ears down and say to my wife, hey, my boss is he says I should go back to school. And fortunately and somewhat surprisingly, she was on board with it. And I said, all right, awesome. So I applied and was accepted to an engineering program with Penn State. That was a 2-year cohort. There was no fast track. You were doing it at their cadence. With regards to, which class you took and when you took it, and there was no doubling up on classes because it was really intended to be for adult learners. And so I did that and went through it, completed it in the 2 years. Again, graduated with a 4.0 GPA, and moved into a supervisory role shortly afterwards, where that team that I was working alongside as a peer in the engineering group became their supervisor. About a year and a half later, or two, I was approached and asked if I would show some interest in a manufacturing engineering management position, which also included everything that I already had responsibility for, plus another group which was test engineering. So quite a big new challenge, a lot more responsibility, what I learned very early on was say yes. And then figure it out. And so I did exactly that. I said, yes, I will go after it. And I applied myself and learned that position and coached and mentored the person that was to take over, the position behind me. And I strongly believe that, he's doing a really awesome job. And a couple of years later, I was told, hey, we want to plan something different for you. So this is the highlight of what it is. Now you go figure out everything, the process, what the organizational structure is going to look like, what's it going to take to make this awesome. And so I took on that challenge, and along with that, moved into my current role, which is the senior manager of systems engineering for our business. So that's me in a nutshell, right? And I think that there are some important points to be made, with that story, right? My personal story is it's not traditional, right? I didn't go to college right outside high school. I tried things different when I was in my early 20s. Took an opportunity to explore, what I wanted, who I wanted to be. There were some chances that came along that I was able to recognize as, good opportunities, and I pursued them, and I pursued them hard. There's a major amount of discipline that goes into this. There's some personal drive for personal excellence that goes into this as well. And then also, success is not measured on what you have in your bank account. It's not measured on the number of friends you have. It's not measured on how well you are, or how well you do at things. It's measured on personal satisfaction. How happy are you, with what you're doing, and making sure that you're able to recognize what those things are that are going to make you happy, and you go after it, and you go after it hard. So that's a little bit about me. Hopefully that's helpful and insightful, and hopefully you enjoyed this experience.
That is great information, Joshua. I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's always good, and I always learn something new when I've heard it a couple times now, but I've learned something new. I didn't know we had a connection in Jason Clark, so that's funny. But we do have a question. What is your typical day in your job?
Well, so at this point in time, there are several meetings that I participate in. There's a lot of decision making that takes place. Learning about new things, new avenues that I need to take the team in order to drive success in our business. I also do, I think a very, very important part of it is communication with the team. So I frequently have one-on-one discussions with my immediate management staff, team members, and making sure that we know what's going on day to day, and that we're making the appropriate decisions to drive our business to success.
All right, we've got a couple more questions. She's asking, what would you recommend I do at this point to get into this field? Like, I'm assuming engineering. Also, what is your favorite thing about your job?
Yeah, so I mean, with regards to getting into the field, it's really about identifying your personal opportunities. What is it that about the field that you want, that interests you, and then also coming up with a game plan. What's it going to take to get there? That's an important part of it. Those two key components is being able to recognize what you want, and then what it's going to take to get there. Write it down on paper. Come up with a plan. What you're going to do week one. What are you going to do in a month? What are you going to do in 6 months? What are you going to do in a year? To all contribute towards achieving your goal. With regards to my favorite part about this is so I am considered a leader in my group amongst my team, and the leadership aspect is something that is extremely engaging for me. Coming up with ways to like I said, make the best decisions in a collaborative manner. To provide guidance in making sure that we're doing things, the way that we should be doing, whether it's in a respectable and honorable manner, and while achieving, all the things that we've got to achieve against our schedules and our deadlines and our cost objectives and those sorts of things.
We have another question, and this is a good one. I guess I'm kind of taking for granted that people know exactly what L3Harris makes and what you do. So can you explain a little bit about maybe, I mean, as a company, I know you do a lot, but maybe you can talk about specifically what is done at this facility here in Forest or in this area. What do you, the question is, what do you fix or create?
Yeah, okay. So here locally in Lynchburg, the business is our public safety and private communications business, and we have sort of two major product portfolios, if you will. One is our infrastructure communication systems, and then also our terminals communication systems. And so terminals, if you think about a police officer or a firefighter, they're carrying a radio on their hip, and they're using that device to be able to communicate back to dispatch or to another officer or another firefighter or whoever else may be on the other side of the call. They're using those devices to communicate. Now, what a lot of people get confused about is, initial impression is wow, this is a walkie-talkie, right? But it's a lot more sophisticated than that. There's actually an infrastructure, a backbone that, is kind of out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes you may see the antenna towers, rising into the sky. But that backbone, that infrastructure is what does all the work in the background. That takes that call and determines where does that call need to go? Who does it need to go to? And it transfers that call to that person. It also plays a role in, you know, how strong that call and how clear that call is going to be, you know, and how far away you can be from, you know, who you are trying to talk to, you know, and those sort of things. So that's what we do here. We have a team that's responsible for designing those systems, is what we call them, and going out and putting those systems in place. We've got a very awesome sales force here that goes out and sells our systems and our radio products. We've got project managers that are responsible to make sure that we're staying in line with scope and cost and schedule. And we've got marketing teams, we got our executive teams, you know, a lot of different flavors, job roles and responsibilities, you know, that are here to make sure that, you know, we're operating as a successful business.
Well, this is great. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I don't think we have any other questions. I do see that we have Dean Teague on the phone. I don't know if he has any words of wisdom that he wants to impart before we leave. But I do really appreciate this time. I don't know if you want to chime in now or not, Dean.
No, I appreciate, like Josh, this chance that you've given us to represent our company. I really came on just to make sure, in case Josh had any technical issues, that you know, we had the opportunity to talk about our company. So my career is quite a bit different than Josh's, and the only advice I would give is never stop learning. As you get new roles, you will have to learn new things, and so. Whatever career you go down, it's not a once you get the job, you're done. You have to continually learn, continually apply yourself, grow. It never stops. It never stops. Your education continues through your entire career. And I'm much later in my career than Josh is, but I continue to have to, you know, learn new things, attend training, get education. It's an important part of life.